guys? It's Guido coming at you with a tank review. Check it out. We have the Kunze Panzer, which is the new Tier 9 German reward for Battle Pass. One of the two new ones, the K91 and the Kunze Panzer, and I will have a review on the K91 coming out soon. Hope your morning's going well. I've got my Columbia de la Cabana, I think. Orange County Roasters, dark roast, very delicious. Very nice, but you can see I've got the Kunze Panzer right here, which is a strange little German tank with a twist, right? Strange little German tank with a twist. We'll do this the standard way. We'll have a, as soon as I figure out what I'm doing right here, we'll have a overview, tech tree considerations, look at the 3D model, such as it is, a comparison amongst its peers, because it has some kind of interesting game mechanics going on. Look at my stats, my setup, and we'll have some examples of gameplay. If you want to jump forward to any one of those, because these do tend to be very comprehensive, then you'll find those down in the description. You can go exactly to where you want to go. That is how we roll in the channel. So many options. All the options are... All right, the Kunze Panzer overview. Let's check it out. Details. This is a medium tank with a forward tilted turret axis and a turret placement of all crew members. All right, first things first. Blueprint tank. Never really existed. It's small for a medium. In fact, if you look at the E50, holy cow, there's 5 guys in that thing. Patton, boom, gigantic compared to this little guy. Even the Leopard prototype, which is relatively small, is much larger. And then you get over to the Russian hover mediums, bigger as well, even though those are quite small tanks. Are there really 4 guys in that thing's turret? We will never know because it wasn't built. Anyway, it's got a commander, a gunner, a driver, and a loader, which I think should be the standard format for all tanks, but that is another video for another day. Standard looking kind of medium, slightly forward mounted turret. It is small, like I said, which is going to be its own little advantage. It's harder to hit smaller targets. If for a given dispersion, there's less tank in the dispersion circle, right? It's harder to aim at them physically with your hands to get the pipper on a smaller tank, blah, blah, blah. There's less surface to aim for, all that good stuff. Just a small thing to think about for the Kunze Panzer. Let's go on and look at the tech tree considerations for this thing. All right, remember it's a reward tank, so it doesn't make extra credits, but it will train any crew that you want. The E50 series is all 5 crew members, so you're going to have a radio operator cooling his heels if you put one of those crew into your Kunze Panzer, but it will work. The Leopard is a better match. The Leopard line, I believe this is probably 5 at the 3002, yeah. So from the Indian Panzer forward, it's 4 crew members, and it's a direct fit, commander, gunner, driver, loader. Although I do need to hold the phone. I'll be right back. I did want to check and make sure where the radio operator was. It happens to be on the commander for that series as well, so that's a direct match for the Indian Panzer Leopard and Leopard 1. I didn't check the Indian Panzer. Hopefully they didn't move the radio operator around, but you get my drift. For the Tier 9 and 10, it's a direct match. The commander is a radio operator. That does cause some issues for putting that commander into an E50, right? The radio operator skills are going to be on the radio operator. Gotta love it, right? You gotta love it. Yeah, it's bad. It's just not a good thing. Those are the tech tree considerations. No modules to, obviously, to have to unlock because it is a reward tank. Let's move on to the 3D model. Well, my friends, as far as armor goes, you may as well ask, what armor? It doesn't have any. Not really. It is a rounded turret. It is a small target. There are some angles for goofy bounces, but really at the end of the day, you're talking about 70 effective, 84, 72 on the turret, up to, it's bad. All right. The mantlet might cause some troubles. You are not going to bounce much of anything. If you do, it is going to be a silly angle bounce at best, or maybe somebody just hit your gun. Heat eaten by tracks, that kind of thing. You cannot rely on this thing's armor. You have to rely on its mobility, its siege mode, and its small size and its ability to poke over ridges. So there's really just nothing else to say about the armor. It don't exist. It does not exist. All right. Now, comparison is where things get silly. It's where things get silly. I have the Kunze Panzer, the Leopard, which is a close analog. Over here on the right, I have the Kanonen Panzer 50T. Whatever it is, the other Tier 9 reward tank that the Germans have, and of course the E-50, and then a couple Russian versions, the German T-55A, and then the Russian, the classic T-54, just for a good group of tanks to compare it against. Firepower is on the low end, even by Wargaming's reckoning, 390 average damage, although that's kind of interesting because that also takes into account accuracy. And what's interesting or weird or something you have to work around with in the Kunze is when it goes into its siege mode and gives you a bunch more depression, there are pluses and minuses to that, which we'll get to in just a second. What you're seeing here, though, is it's standard, I believe, or maybe the top. I haven't been able to figure out whether this is in siege mode or what, but I'm going to give you, we're going to go to another website and I'll kind of show you the difference between the two. I like to use this because it's the in-game stuff, but there's some better information sometimes on tanks.gg. Penetration's at 268, which is decent. It's kind of wildly all over the place on these things. We'll talk about the gold round in a second. Rate of fire is okay. We come down here, we got pretty good average DPM. Pretty good average DPM, and that is going to be not in siege mode. Your DPM goes down in siege mode. Minus 15 is your best depression. That's in siege mode. So that's kind of a pain the way they've done this, unfortunately, on their own comparison tool. You can't really tell it, from what I can tell anyway. I don't see anywhere where I can tell it to go into siege mode and show me those stats. That's a problem. World of Tanks, fix that, Wargaming. Gun traverse is decent. The dispersion is 0.4. That is not in siege mode. See how things are kind of all over the place on this thing? Your dispersion gets much better when you go into siege mode. So basically, you're going to go into siege mode. You're going to be a bit of a sniper, but you're going to be slower. That's the general idea, and you're not going to do as much damage. That's the general idea. Aim time is atrocious at 2.59. That you will notice that. You will absolutely notice that. It gets better in siege mode when you become Mr. Sniper Boy. But dispersion at 0.4 and an atrocious aim time when you're not in siege mode, it's a bit derpy, or a lot derpy, however you want to look at it. Survivability, 1600 hit points is at the low end of that. There's the armor that doesn't exist, 40 and 63 on the turret. It's very Leopard PTA-esque in its softness, so treat it as such. If you're familiar with the Leopard PTA, that is the kind of care and feeding that it requires so you do not get obliterated in the game. Specific power is quite nice, and 65 is a good top end, as fast as the Leopard, with a little bit better specific power, so its get up and go is pretty good. Switching modes is 2 seconds, either way, back or forth. Pretty quick, so it's not that painful to wait for. And then you've got the camos at 17 and 12, which is actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good, top of the class. Because it's such a small little tank, it gets a little bit more bonus on its camo, and that will help you then in siege mode for the second line sniper stuff, if that's how you're going to try to play the tank. So when you compare it to the rest of them, 390, pretty nice. The Leopard PTA with that really hard-hitting 420, which is good. Good penetration on its standard round. That's very nice. It's nice to have good penetration on a standard round so you don't have to press two a whole bunch. We'll get into the gold round in just a second and look at that thing's penetration. And the rest of it is looking pretty good. Weird trade-off, right? You got kind of a derpy gun when you're moving fast. You go into siege mode, you're slow, but you got a much more accurate gun. This is going to require some real thought on how you use this tank. It is definitely going to require some thought on how you use the tank. But the DPM is not that far above the rest of these guys, right? It's not head and shoulders. It's good, top of its class, but look at some of these other numbers, 25, 26, 2480. Not that big of a bonus, to be quite honest. And then it gets much worse when you become Sniper Boy, one of the trade-offs. All right, let's take a look at my stats. Right, let's take a quick look right here on what going into siege mode entails. I think later on in the video I'm going to say a couple times that it's 20 kilometers an hour when you're in siege mode. It's actually 30 based on what it's saying right here. But in tanks.gg, there's a little symbol here where you can turn it into siege mode. So you can see it's, as we've noted, it's 2600 DPM, 0.40 dispersion. Mine showed 0.38 with my setup, with my crew. Yada yada. If we switch to siege mode, it drops the DPM down to 1900. It's got a longer reload time from 8.9 to 11.79. Excuse me. Rate of fire decreases. The soft stats are much worse on moving whole turret in a whole traverse, but the dispersion goes from 0.4 to 0.29, and the aim time from that uncomfortable 259 to a very comfortable 1.73, and the top speed from 65 to 30, and the reverse speed actually gets gimped as well. So you can see then Less DPM, more accuracy, some worse soft stats, which means if you're doing a whole bunch of moving, that can be a problem. But if you're continuing just to kind of poke and sniper, which you'll see a little bit of in the replays there, works out pretty nicely. So it is, as I've said, an interesting tactical decision on when to use it. Quickly, before we go to my stats on it, I did want to talk about the penetration. So 268 is a really good baseline penetration. And then you spend the money and you're only getting 300 out of a heat round. Oof, that hurts a little bit. Whereas the Leopard PTA gets a spectacular APCR round at plus 300 something, 320 I want to say, out of that. So this round is not a great gold round for a tank. I'll show you a little bit of the issues with that thing later on when I show you the gameplay. The shell velocity is good for the standard round at 1478. Anytime you're around 1500, that's really nice. Of course, it drops off. Heat rounds tend to be slower, and that's kind of atrocious. You get more into the softball effect when you get at near 1,000 meters a second right there. So not a great gold round. It hurts it a little bit. Well, how did I do? I played 20 battles. I like to get 20 in before I make my reviews. 55% win rate. Standard disclaimer there, that's easily 45 with just a couple 3 bad games. Could be 65 with a couple more good games there. That's a very low sample size, but the numbers are tracking within the rest of my tier 9s, and I would not be that surprised for this to be about a 55% solo tank for me. Somewhere between 55 and 60. I think 60 is pushing it a bit, especially with only averaging 82. If I was north of 1,000 on the experience, that'd make me feel a little bit better. But I'm averaging 2,415 in damage. I am averaging 726 in assistance. The damage and destruction are good. The destruction, I think, is way higher than it would pan out to be. I don't think I would stick with a 3, but right now I'm doing pretty good with that. There's the armor use. Anytime you're down around 0, that's just lucky bounce armor area, and you can tell by its amount of armor that's what you're going to get. My hit rate is really low. I would much rather that be 75 to 80, but that talks to a bit about the derpiness of the gun. When I played these 20 battles, I didn't really understand what happened when you went into siege mode other than depression. I didn't realize there was a trade-off on DPM and accuracy between the two, so that's going to require a little bit more thought. We'll talk about that when we get to the examples, but I think now that I know that, I would do things a little bit different, and I might bring that up, but it needs to be at 75. Survives 50, which at 55% win rate in 20 battles, it's going to be pretty high, basically right there. And I had one decent game at 4,226. At a 55% win rate, I felt like a lot of times with this tank, because of the way I was playing it, the second line sniper, trying to work ridges and things. On my losses, I tended to rack up decent damage, but it was all in a losing cause, hanging out in the back, using the siege mode, stuff like that. So that was an interesting trade-off. So my DPM is decent. If we look at the KPZ-52, I'm at 21. If we look at my Leopard Proto, we're at 21. My T-55, we're at 21. So that's a little high right now, I think, for me. It'd be nice if I can keep that up, but it's certainly in the ballpark with the rest of the numbers right there. Quick look then at my setup. I am running vents, a rammer, and a vertical stabilizer. There's an argument for the IRM to be used on there, but I think this is probably the best setup for the Kunze Panzer. Let me know down below if you have any others. Remember that this reward tank has one of these cool standard large repair kits that doesn't cost anything, and it's a large repair kit. That's pretty awesome, and you can continue to use that through the battle at no cost, and you can't take it off if you wanted to. But that's a great little perk for these reward tanks. It's a really nice thing to have because there's an easy 10,000 saved, or however many times you use it, saved during a battle right there. 48 heat rounds and 2 HE rounds for giggles. I'm running a large fire extinguisher. I did not use food, and I did not use any directives. I do not know what the fire chance on this, and so I didn't light on fire as far as I know. If I did, I had an automatic fire extinguisher put it out. I think you're playing with fire a little bit with the German tanks when you do that, but that is certainly an option to bring some of these numbers down, because as it sits, you can see I'm sitting at 0.38, and that is not in siege mode right there, and 3,061 DPM with my setup. I had a good crew. It's my Leopard PTA crew. They have 4 skills, and they're working on their 5th, so I had a good crew through this whole thing as well. All right, and that is it for my setup. Let's look at some examples. This was my very first battle right here. Very first battle. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then for some reason I'm going to have to switch every bloody time over to colorblind mode for you guys. There we go. All right. Fantastic. And off we go. So we're going to head up the hill in the Kunze Panzer. And I don't remember if I ended up using much of the siege mode right here. It has -10 anyway. Very usable, especially on this position on this side. As you pop up over, nice advantage on the south spawn up here on the dueling hold down tanks. The other side has a much steeper approach and it's harder for them to use it. Although having this tank on the other side probably give you a pretty good capability with the -15 in siege mode. So we'll take a quick shot at him. We bounce off the pretty good angled top armor of the 54 Mod 1. Those two guys are headed around the corner. Good mobility to get up the hill, so nice speed. That 65 kilometers an hour got me right up the hill. And trying to snipe here, not in sniper mode or not in siege mode, so I probably should have gone into siege mode. I said, well, I don't really need to because I have the depression, but like I said, I didn't realize at this point that you got more accuracy out of being in siege mode, so I should have done that. Now I'm not going to pen a Carnarvon AX in the turret. I'm seeing that we have some guys going around them right there. I'm going to try to sneak a shot into this guy if I can. There we go. We get that one working, and we'll keep on working on this guy. All right, little hiccup there. Little hiccup. We're back. All right. Starting to win pretty well. 794. This is not an amazing game. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the siege mode. Things to think about. That was certainly a position right there to get into the siege mode and work some of that accuracy. Decent mobility while you're going. Once you get close to them like this, you're going to have a much better time. Obviously, with the slightly derpier gun, it's not going to matter nearly as much. Drop that guy. And so what's nice about the speed then is in cleanup on aisle 2 situations, you've got the speed to get there. You know, we have some other tanks that have siege mode, but they tend to be TDs. And their ability to kind of do things like this is limited based on, you know, the Sturb series is going to struggle to do these kind of things. So you've got a medium that has this siege mode that's going to allow you to do some Sturvy kind of things. We'll come around here, which is a bit of a new thing in the game, right? A bit of a new thing in the game. This AE Phase 1 just getting absolutely rocked. And we'll just bounce off the side armor right there. Got a guy coming in from the side that already puts a thump on us. We should out-reload the AE Phase 1, and we do so. 251's coming around behind us, potentially. A bit of a bad effort on my part there. Wasn't really ready to shoot that guy. And the T10 goes in there and starts taking down the 251. So I'm using that DPM, that good DPM, to decent effect here. An opportunity to go into siege mode. Some of the derpiness of the gun as an example right there, and that was all we did. 2,742, I got 2 kills, and we end up with the win. Let's look at the second example. The second example is Proc. We spawn into the south, and that's going to give me an opportunity to go up on the hill. Did this on purpose to try to use the siege mode a little bit and see what it does. So we'll come on up here. We're also going to see some heavily armored tanks. I'm going to be trying to shoot heat. It's going to be a bit of a problem based on the armor and the angles and things. But we'll come up here and I'll take this forward position. There's only one arty. That's a good thing. One of the problems with going into siege mode is it slows you down quite a bit. We're both going to hit each other. Actually, I thought I got a hit right there. I guess I got him. Problem with going to siege mode is it slows you down, makes you more vulnerable to arty. So that's something to think about. If you're using a position like this where you know you're going to get lit quite a bit, if you're in siege mode, you are slower and it's going to be harder to get out of the way of the artillery. That's one of the advantages of a medium tank. It's easier, I guess, to get out of the way of artillery because you can maneuver around. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just using the maneuver mode. Bit derpy on the gun. Progetto takes a couple hits and we'll just continue to work this. We find a Renegade hanging out. That actually hits for a wonder. I don't need the siege mode. Take that shot on him and miss. Now Renegade is in a terrible position right there. Basically just going to get farmed. I'm looking for a shot on him. There we go. We sneak one into him with that good standard penetration. And he's just in all kinds of trouble. There's that long zoom time. And the fact that it's quite derpy, you see the dispersion circle still quite large. And pretty soon here we'll start working a little bit of the siege mode. We'll see some of that improve. They have a lot of guys up here. We're just looking for shots basically whenever we can get them. Medium range, a 0.4, and I think it sits at 0.38 like I showed you. A 0.38 dispersion at this kind of close to medium range is doable, is usable. When you start talking about longer range shots, it can be quite a bit trickier. We got 1,079, 431 assist. We have quite a few guys on the back slope right here, and we also haven't been shot at by Artie, at least I haven't. So far, feeling pretty good about the Artie situation. And now, the first time we've gone into siege mode, you can see that's my fastest forward speed. It's about 20 kilometers an hour. It gives you a different kind of reticle right there. And it's going to show you some of the degrees of the hydraulics, the hydro-pneumatic suspension. We're just going to try to use this little spot right here. I probably don't even really need it, except for maybe shots like this. And there's that heat. It's going to struggle to go through that angled backside angle armor on the ST1. So only 300 pin. All those are going to be hard. Now here's one I'm going to try to put into the turret. That missed. Although you did see that the dispersion circle was a little bit smaller. So a little bit better sniper-wise. Longer reload. And I remember thinking in this game, I'm like, what is going on? Why do I feel like my timing on my shots is different from what it just was? It's because it was. I did not realize that the reload was slower and your DPM went down in siege mode. And again, the siege mode potentially not technically required right there with the amount of degrees of depression that I needed, but that's that decision you need to make. Am I going to look for that better? Do I need that better accuracy? And I'm willing to give up some of my DPM to do it. This is a false, I don't know, it's a bit of a false conundrum, or I can't think of what the word is that I'm looking for. I don't think it matters that much whether you're using the siege mode or whether you're using not siege mode to have DPM. Now if I'm in a swirling fight, then I'm going to want my speed and I'm going to want my DPM because the accuracy doesn't matter. But you would naturally just not be in siege mode for that kind of fight, right? If I'm brawling with a couple mediums or a medium and we're swirling around, or I'm chasing a light tank, I would not be in siege mode because I don't want to be slow. The accuracy is sort of an afterthought. And while it's nice to have more DPM, not a big deal, really. If I'm going to go into siege mode, it's a very specific situation where I need the depression really more than I need the rest of the things. And the accuracy is a nice add-on to that. But I don't think I play this tank and go, I need to go find a place where I can do the Kunze Panzer sniper thing with my hydro pneumatics. I don't think I start any battle like that and go, my plan is to use the Kunze Panzer's one trick on the one trick pony. It's all dynamic. You're going to use it when you can. I think you're going to use it a lot less than you might think. And I don't know if it was really required even in this battle. It's just the trade-off is kind of weird, I guess. And my point is, I don't think the way the game is played, it matters that much. I think it can be used. It's something to think about. It's on the tank. Use it. But the idea that somehow it makes this tank this amazing tank when it's in siege mode, I sort of scoff that. That's just going to bounce. That's that angle thing I talked about with heat. Probably needed to be just firing regular APCR at this point. That's a lot of waste. I don't know if I've got any damage out of the, 4 or so, or I guess it's 5 now, heat rounds I've fired. No return for my investment on any of that stuff right there. So like I said, this was the first time I had really used the pneumatics here. The Artie's dead, so we don't have to worry about him. The LPC, you can see my team is starting to carve around to the side. We got him stuffed into the northeast corner right here, and I'm just waiting for some lights back in the back. I don't want to come over the hill. There's enough tanks left, especially that Sturv, that if I come blazing over there, I might get some assist damage from the Sniperinos sitting on the 6 line, but I probably won't last very long because the thing just doesn't have any armor. I'm thinking the stirve is in that little spot there, but I hit short anyway. So now we're getting the lights on these guys. Got a little shot on him. We bounce off the side. I've gone back to my APCR because the heat's just not doing the JOB. No shots on that guy. Finally get a shot into the side. That was good. Probably a heat round gets eaten by the track, so I'm glad I switched back to the APCR on that. The ST1 is just put himself in an awful position right there. I was making a runner. Get a bounce that time, unfortunately, or a crit, no damage, whichever one. Waiting for the reload. Come on, baby, you get lit. We'll just accept it. Might take a hit. Put another one into his side and track him. That works for me. Up to 1851. LPC1 or LPC TL1 LPC ABC 123 takes a hit. And again, looking for a shot in the siege mode here. See if we sneak one on him. I think somebody else, yeah, somebody else actually kills him right there. And now time to start thinking about pushing into these guys. They're busy enough. One thing you have to think about on these pushes like this, there is a point at which you can be too careful, because if their hold down guys start taking out your spotters and pushers one by one, all of a sudden they've evened up the game while you kind of sat up there doing a whole bunch of nothing. So it looks like we all get the same idea. You push in on them at the same time. We take these guys down. The T or IS-3, it's not, I thought it was a T-10, but the IS-3 takes a hit. We'll just run around this way. And we end up with 3,145, 822 assist, no kill. So an example of the hydro pneumatic, and we'll look at one more example of gameplay. All right, I showed you my first battle. I showed you an example of using the hydro pneumatic siege mode of the tank. And I did discuss a little bit how I thought it wouldn't really change a whole bunch about how you play the game. However, it does remain that this tank will open up some parts of the map that you might not be able to use otherwise. But the thing is, -10 kind of covers it anyway. So -15, I don't know. There are some situations and positions where -15 is going to let you use parts of the map you could not otherwise have used. So it is going to open up some maps on some occasions. The -10 works here based on the way I'm using this, but the -15 helps out a little bit, and I'm able to take some cheeky shots. Plus, it's a small tank with a little turret. So poking up in situations like this is going to be a little more survivable. Now, the problem is the turret's not good for bouncing, so if they hit you, they're probably going to pin right here. But there are positions on this map that -15 open up once you have -15. Again, I know I'm harping on it. I just don't think it's that big of a deal overall. But if you can find the positions, you can do some good work. This position here, you can pretty much use with a -10, especially if you're coming up to the side here, and use a little bit of this angle here to help out with your depression. But it's very comfortable with -15 with the pneumatic thing going on here in siege mode. I can just come up here and shoot just about anybody. Now they already starts trying to peel me out of here. So he gets run over, and now I'm going to come up here and look how nice that is right there. Now that is something you're going to have a hard time doing with -10 on that position right here. It was okay when you were coming sideways and shooting at this guy, but now I'm just barely poking over this right here, and I've got my gun easily on this WZ, so if he's able to come around, I think he actually dies before I can get any damage on the guy. But look at that, the pneumatics. I'm going to knock down the building, or at least try right there to open up the shots. He's going to make a runner. I don't think I get any damage. Yeah, he's behind buildings for me. And if there was somebody back in this corner back here, you'd have the depression to come up over there, sneak up over that little ridge, and take a cheeky shot. So just an example of one of the places that's opened up by having -15. But remember, you're slower. Your DPM is lower, but your accuracy is better. My worry is there's somebody in this corner over here. I really don't want to take a hit from the Su-130 or some such thing, or any of the other number of campers that might be in the back. You can see the suspension's doing its thing right there. See how it's lifted up in the back? Udez 16 sitting there. We're going to get out of siege mode, and now we're going to move. So we get out of siege mode, we're a little bit faster, we'll come around this way. We'll run into the side of the of the map. The WZ's raging around. Take a shot on him. Things are looking pretty good. We're actually losing by 1, but we've got good map control, provided the north can kind of hold on for a moment. You do have to be careful right here. Pushing in too fast and too hard if you get farmed by all their campers. And there goes all the guys taking off in the morning. Making all kinds of noise. 257's kind of suffering what I was worried about. I'll take a shot on that guy and get rid of him, but that's going to get us spotted. So we're going to go ahead and fade behind some of these buildings and try to keep some of these guys from shooting us. Act like we're running away. And then come back inside here and see what we can do. Remember, the accuracy is not so good unless you're in siege mode. And this is the other part of what I wanted to show you on this particular one, is making those decisions. All right, do I need good accuracy to kind of snipe through all these various pieces of building and the hill and stuff, and then lose mobility? Or do I want to keep my mobility and just accept that my accuracy is kind of potato back here as a medium? I'm just sort of trying to use the vision game right here. I really don't want to get spotted because I'm absolutely highlighted on this hill. While I'm hold down slightly, I still have a lot of my tank exposed right here, and the 257 is clearly spotted. We're not doing a really great job of pushing in on them. We finally start to find these guys, and I get a bounce off the Udez, and that's a big old bummer. Would have been nice to have taken a piece out of him. And off he goes that away. He's just trying to survive. Let's see if we can get a shot on him now. And that's a miss. A little bit rushed. I think I probably could have waited for a better shot. But I think I was going to get spotted either way, so let's go ahead and run down this way. Cover up from him, and I know he's got friends back there. 257 finally gets the Udez out, so that's helpful. And now start moving up to start to put pressure on the guys that are in the back and potentially across on the guys that are hanging out over there. So when 30 dies, that was one of their forward spotters. That's very good. Now we're just trying to find a shot on the LIS. Notice how slow the zoom is. So it was a weird thing with this tank. Trying to figure out what mode did I need to be in and when, and what the trade-offs were, the relative trade-offs. Kind of derpy, but that one goes in. The gun just isn't very comfortable, and I have to say that even when you're in siege mode, the gun isn't really comfortable, not because the gun is bad or the accuracy is terrible. It's that the slowness of the tank moving around. You know, very few times are you able to get into one position in World of Tanks and just keep poking over the same spot and use suspension. Sturves get away with it, and here's the derpiness because I didn't go into siege mode, right? This is what I'm talking about. Sturves do it, but they're relying on a bunch of camo and sitting behind bushes and things. If you're trying to be kind of a mobile medium, when you force yourself into the siege mode and when you try to get out, that's difficult sometimes to make that decision, because you want the mobility of the medium so you can get around, but you start taking shots like that and you need the accuracy, and I start taking shots from every side, which is no bueno. This is a bad situation right here. I got guys on either side of me. They're pushing in. So finally my team starts taking them down over there, and I don't have to worry about it. I actually hit the IS-6. So let's go ahead and try to find this Hellcat back here. Once he's got me lit, yeah, there we go. So there's another hit, and I get hammered by the Arty naturally. Why wouldn't I? 2,820. We've got 889. I'm just looking for some spotting on the Super Hellcat. Maybe I can survive. There he is. Let it zoom in a little bit. Works out for me. Big dispersion circle, though. I could have easily missed that. You know, I'm in that mobile mode, 3,200 and 3,562. I'm in that mobile mode right there, so I'm giving up the accuracy. So you see what I'm saying? Interesting tank. 3,562 damage, 889, and 4 kills on the win on that. Let's wrap this thing up. All right, that's my review on the Kunze Panzer, the Tier 9 German reward tank. Overall, what would I say? I think I'm just not going to come down on one side or the other in this. I'm going to need to play this in a little bit more to figure out if the gimmick is worth anything. It's a fun tank. It's certainly capable, and as far as opening up map positions and places and being a sniper, there's a lot of potential there. I don't know how much of it really translates into the way the game is played, certainly in certain cases. So really the bottom line is this tank so situational that the advantages of its situation in the long run won't matter? That's the question. I lean towards probably yes, but you are going to have games where you're able to use the pneumatics, and it's going to be a little beast. It's going to be a little beast. But I think the trade-off in the long run is that it's going to be a very average tank. So I'm going to say that this is a very average tank with the possibility of above average games if the gimmick can be used. And most of the gimmick tanks are like that, right? Most of the gimmick tanks are like that. The extra speed on the tier 10 medium check or whatever it is, the stirves, being able to hide, all the tanks that have these interesting little gimmicks don't tend to make them overpowered or extremely useful except in the gimmick zone that they live in which case they can have quite beastly games. So I think this tank inhabits that area, but it's also flexible enough otherwise that it will be a very average medium tank just driving around the way it is. There you go. I will rank order the 5 tanks that are available for Battle Pass. We'll have another video on that later. The K91 review will be coming out as well. So once I review the K91, I'll have all 5 of them reviewed and we'll talk about them. I'll go ahead and rank order them, and I'm going to actually dig into that a little bit because I'm going to rank order it for the type of player that you might be. Rather than just say hard, this is the top 5, we'll move them around a little bit depending on what kind of player you might be. That's all I've got for the Kunze Panzer. Let me know down below what you think of the review. Disagree, agree, all that good stuff. Thanks for your support of the channel. That's all I've got, and we will see ya.